A quorum being present, this 379th annual town meeting of Reading is called to order. So this is what you all look like in real life? Okay, we're going to begin with a little more pomp than we normally have. We're going to start with the Reading Police Honor Guard presenting the colors, followed by the RMHS Select Choir and the RMHS Jazz Ensemble with the National Anthem, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and then our Invocation. So at this point, I ask the Reading Police Department Honor Guard to present the colors. And please rise.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now I ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we will have our reflections and invocation by Mr. Pacino.
Let us pray. First, we thank our former town manager for his dedication and work in leading our town these past years. We ask the Lord to guide our new town manager to a successful tenure as we go forward with him. Lord, we ask for your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions during this meeting. Help us to carefully consider the relevant information that has been gathered. May those sharing information give us pertinent points as we can all clearly understand. Help us to be innovative as we design solutions. Help us to wisely evaluate our options, considering all the pros and cons. Help us to be unified in making the best possible decisions and to effectively carry them out. Lord, we further invite you to preside over this meeting. Even if we have different opinions, give us the unity of spirit. Help us to listen politely to others as others share their points of view. Help us to work as a unified team in combining ideas for a just outcome. Help us to work as a whole rather than as individuals. As we consider all of us as being friends with each other, may we have a spirit of camaraderie and work together on our shared mission. God bless America. Praise the Lord. Amen.
Thank you. And now we traditionally swear in our new and newly re-elected town meeting members. So if you would like to stand to take the oath, actually you all are this time. So, so if you would repeat after me, I solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on me as a town meeting member according to the best of my ability and understanding, agreeably to the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and to the Charter and bylaws of the Town of Reading. So help me God. Congratulations and welcome back, everyone. Okay, next, the clerk will read the warrant.
To any of the constables of the town of Reading, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Reading qualified to vote in the local elections and town affairs to meet in the following place designated by the 8 precincts in said town.
Mr. Doxer moves that we dispense with the further reading of the warrant with the exception of the officer's return. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of dispensing with the further reading, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries.
By the virtue of this warrant, I, Thomas Freeman Jr., on March 3rd, 2022, notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Reading qualified to vote on town affairs to meet at the place and the time specified by posting attested copies of the town meeting warrant in the following public places within the town of Reading. Precinct 1, Warren Killam School. Precinct 2, Reading Police Station. Precinct 3, Reading Memorial Light Department. Precinct 4, Joshua Eaton School. Precinct 5, Reading Public Library. Precinct 6, Barrows School. Precinct 7, Birch Meadow School. Precinct 8, Wood End School, and Town Hall. The date of the posting being not less than 14 days prior to the April 5th, 2022, the date set for the town meeting in this warrant.
Thank you very much. Now, before we begin, the chair would like to remind town meeting members and inform now newly elected members about some of the basic rules on how we plan to proceed over the next few days. When you are recognized, please wait until you are at the microphone before speaking. In addition to being heard in the hall, we want you to be heard on RCTV as well. The tapes from the cablecast may be used in verifying the official report. Before speaking, please state your name and precinct. Members are limited to no more than 10 minutes. The chair will call on people roughly in the order that they raise their hands, taking those who have not yet spoken first. Non-members may speak, but only after members have first had the opportunity to do so. Remember to stay away from personal attacks or, for the most part, personal references. We are here to discuss issues and not personalities. After debate has proceeded for a while, we may have someone move the previous question or simply move the question. That is a call for debate to end. That motion itself is non-debatable, and we will proceed directly to the issue of stopping debate. It takes a 2/3 vote. The chair will not recognize that motion from a person who has just spoken. In other words, if you want to end debate, you must be the only thing that you have risen for. Amendments. We may have people offer amendments to motions on the floor. When a motion for amendment is accepted, we will move directly to debate on the proposed amendment. Once disposed of, we return to debate on the main question. Other proposed amendments may come up after that as well. Town meeting members must be sitting in the lower portion of the hall if they want to be recognized as town meeting members and have their votes counted. I realize, however, because of COVID concerns, a few members have asked if they could sit in the back to allow more distancing. And that's fine, but please come forward if you want to speak or to vote. Instructional motions. Article 3 is placed on the warrant by the Select Board and calls for instructional motions. These motions instruct various boards or individuals to do whatever the motion calls for. Proposed instructional motions were due at the town hall last Friday, so we will have 3 instructional motions this meeting. Although the article for instructional motions comes early, Article 3, we generally lay this on the table and take it up again at the end of the meeting, whatever night that happens to be. There's often confusion with 2 particular motions, indefinite postponement and tabling. Let me give you a brief explanation of the difference. Indefinite postponement is a motion asking that the body not vote for a particular motion during the life of this town meeting. Although it is thought of more as not so much as a vote against a particular issue, but rather a postponement, the result is the same. Voting in favor of indefinite postponement has the same result as voting against the main motion. It's usually done if the town meeting feels it's just not ready to vote on that. A motion to indefinite postponement is debatable. Now, tabling is used for another purpose altogether. Tabling temporarily puts a motion aside. It can be brought up again by anyone moving to take it from the table at any time before the final adjournment of the meeting. This motion is non-debatable, although the chair usually allows a brief explanation as to why the motion to table has been made. Adjournment. There are 2 types of adjournment. At the end of an evening, we adjourn to a time certain. Tonight, for instance, when we're done for the evening, presumably we'll adjourn until Thursday. When we are done with all of the business of town meeting, we adjourn sine die, which translates without day. In other words, the meeting is complete. Finally, I'd like to explain how things are likely to proceed over the next few hours and the next few days. Tonight, we'll begin with Article 2. You'll notice Article 1 was the election, which we've already taken care of. And then we will proceed as far as we can. On Thursday, the plan is to take Article 18 out of order, the operating budget. With some luck, we'll finish the entire budget in one night. If we should finish early on Thursday, we'll return to wherever we left off tonight, temporarily skipping by Article 15. Next Monday, the 3rd night, assuming we have finished the budget, we will take up Article 15. Following completion of that article, we'll return to wherever we left off again, and we'll keep working in order until we finish. Just to quickly recap, we plan to take Article 18 and 15 out of order and start them on Thursday and Monday, respectively. One final comment. On behalf of town meeting, I'd like to welcome our new town manager, his very first town meeting. Welcome, Fidel Maltez. And we are now ready for business on Article 2, the state of the town. Mr. Doxer.
Motion under Article 2 to hear and act on the reports of the Select Board, School Committee, Library Trustees, Municipal Light Board, Finance Committee, Bylaw Committee, Town Manager, Town Accountant, and any other town official, board, or committee. And further, move to table the subject matter of Article 2.
Are you not giving the state of the town? Hold on. Yeah, number 2. All right. Are you giving the state of the town now? No? Oh, okay. All right, there's a motion in a second to lay substance of Article 2 on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Is there a point of order? Yes, okay. Could you use the microphone?
Here, towards the back.
Are you having a problem with my microphone too? Oh.
Yeah, it's very difficult to follow the narrative and the
Okay.
conversation. So I think that something could be improved upon when it comes to the volume. Thank you.
Okay, is this any better? Okay, they must have handled it. Okay, thank you very much. Ms. O'Neill, did you?
Mary Ellen O'Neill, Precinct 6. Can we ask why there are no reports, especially the state of the town? And if not, when would it be provided?
Mr. Doxson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for the question, Ms. O'Neill. Because of the format change that we've done, going kind of from Zoom and heading back into the book, the thought was that we'd put all of those reports actually into the book physically. And so if you look at page... Starting with page 44 is the town manager's budget message. On page 50 is the budget summary from the Finance Committee. On page 52 is the state of the town from Ms. Herrick. And then on page 54 is the report from the recalc, the ad hoc committee. Oh, sorry, yeah, and 56 is the municipal building facility assessment presentations. So they're all designed to be in the book for this year.
Okay, all right, business under Article 3. Mr. Doxson moves that we lay the substance of Article 3 on the table. Just to explain, that will come up later on in the meeting. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of laying the substance of Article 3 on the table, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. The town clerk says I did not take the vote to lay Article 2 on the table, so I will go backwards to do that. All those in favor of laying the substance of Article 2 on the table, please raise your hand. And those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're official. Now we are up to Article 4. Mr. Maltese?
All right. First off, thank you, everyone. Hopefully I'm not too loud now. It's okay? All right. So before I start my presentation, I just wanted to reiterate just the gratefulness that I have, and I know our staff has as well, and all the boards, for Bob's service, right? I mean, Bob was an integral part of this town meeting, so even though he is not here, he essentially teed everything up for us. So the success of this town meeting is purely due to the hard work of Bob, our previous town manager. So for that, I thank Bob. So just jumping into the content. So for Article 4, right? It is an article that appears on all town meeting warrants, and it is essentially it gives us an opportunity to modify our capital plan, right? So how we essentially present it is by fiscal year. So you will see that in our FY22 capital plan, it is the three items that are presented first. We are requesting a modification of 3 items for a total of $145,000. So Article 4 is a modification of the capital plan, and it feeds Article 5, which is a change in the FY22 budget. So you'll see that the 3 items in FY22 will again show up in Article 5. So just to explain it a little bit, there's 3 items in FY22 that consist of $145,000 worth of changes. The biggest item is $110,000 for parking kiosks. You might have seen in our previous select board meeting on April 19th that the park committee came and presented a very thorough review of the parking changes that are being proposed to the select board. We expect the select board to act on those recommendations at their next meeting on May 3rd. The next major bullet point is for changes to our FY23 capital plan, and that is essentially the fiscal year that is coming up. So it's not major changes. The biggest one is the addition of a snow holder by DPW, and essentially is what we are finding is that snow removal is really effective with this type of equipment. Essentially, it is a loader with an attachment to it, and it allows us to use the loader for the next for throughout the year. Thank you. And FY24 and beyond is a series of changes, right? So it's a series of minor changes. As you see, the net change is nominal when it comes to our capital expense of $25,000. It is my understanding that we in our strategy of capital planning we do a little bit of shifting, right? And there's things that we move up and things that we move down. As you can see, these were items that have been reviewed with our staff, have been presented to FinCom, and they'll give a report shortly on Article 4. And then moving to the enterprise budget. So in FY22, in water, we are requesting an additional $400,000 in FY22, so in this fiscal year, and it is mostly related to emergency repairs on Walker's Brook Drive. On the sewer side, we are starting a fairly large project to replace the sewer mains in our downtown on Haven Street primarily, and we are requesting $150,000 in additional funding. So we received roughly $1 million already in funding, but just with the economy, fluctuation in pricing for items, we are requesting an additional $150,000 just to make sure that we are covered for the project. Finally, in FY23, we are requesting an additional $400,000 in the water enterprise fund, and these funds are going to pay for the replacement on water main on Emerson. This work was originally scheduled in FY22, but was delayed to FY23 because of Walker's Brook. So it's essentially we're trying to get that done, because it is needed. In the sewer enterprise budget, we are adding a $300,000 expense for drainage in Memorial Park. And again, for FY24 and beyond, there's minor modifications that are being requested. And that is my presentation on Article 4.
Thank you very much. FinCom report.
On March 15th, 2022, the Finance Committee recommended Article 4 for town meeting.
Do you know what the vote was?
Oh, sorry. Finance Committee recommended Article 4 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Joe McDonough, Finance Committee, Precinct 8. So.
Okay, further discussion? Yes, on the aisle.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Sasso, Precinct 2. Just a couple quick points and questions. First one, I think I know the answer to this, but I think it's worth bringing up. So back in November, town meeting approved, give or take, $4.5 million towards the Northeast Regional Vocational School. That obviously went through a town and community-wide vote after that, which did finally pass. And we're going to start to see that cost show up in our budget over the next 30 years. initially I thought maybe this should also be in the capital budget, but I was told that no, this is all going to be under accommodated costs. So even though it's capital that's being pulled out of Northeast Regional, we're going to pay for it through our operating budget. First of all, just want to make sure everybody understands that, and I just want to clarify if that in fact is the case.
Mr. Maltese?
So it is the case, and it is going to be done this way for all communities that the Northeast Vocational School will do. Essentially, how it works is that they will build it into our annual assessment, right? So based on enrollment, right, we will get a bill for the capital plan or the capital cost, we'll say, as well as our typical enrollment cost. And in the booklet, you'll see that it's actually projected out to hit our books, I believe, in FY25 or FY26. So it's already in there. If you see the financial forecast, we do incorporate it into the forecast, but it is the way that it's being done by all communities that I know of.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Second question I had, and again, just looking back through the budget as many times as I have, I know in the capital plan, X debt means excluded debt under the basically money that was done through a debt override or debt exclusion. And then we have debt NA. I guess I was under the assumption, I should never assume, but that meant debt not approved?
Yes, that's correct.
So
not authorized.
So does that mean not approved in the sense that it hasn't been issued, or not approved meaning it hasn't been approved through town meeting?
So it's the latter. So it is our recommendation and financial forecast of future debt, but it has not been voted for through an article in town meeting.
Okay. Then I think I would suggest we might want to take a look, because I know that there's money in those in the capital plan under debt NA that actually was approved. Like, for example, the one example is the police station last year, $1.5 million. That cost is actually listed as debt NA. It's the funding of it itself is actually listed in the debt section, but in the forecast section, it's listed as debt NA. So again, I think there's actually 3 or 4 items in the budget that were actually approved in November, of either April or November, that were actually approved. So just for clarification points, that it was a little confusing to me because I thought that was the case, but then obviously because those were in fact approved by town meeting, they should have been listed as debt, just to be clear.
Sure.
And then the last question I have, just on debt in general. So I know obviously FinCom has a 5.5% guidance on debt. I was curious, as I was adding it up, does FinCom have a policy on overall debt, i.e., debt to expenses, debt to income? Like, we got about $30 million, $27 million, give or take, in open debt right now. Is there a policy related to that as well, or is it only the 5% capital debt policy?
So my understanding is that it is a guidance on the annual cost of debt, right? So and as you know, I mean, there is a significant amount of debt that is dropping off, right? And in the budget message, Bob very carefully outlines that the high school, right, reconstruction, and the library will fall off soon, right? So any highlights that that might be replaced by another project, but that the overall debt impact should go down.
So those were excluded debt. I was just meaning within the levy. We've got about 27 million recently, give or take, because some of that's already started to be paid off, and some of it's projected out over the next few years. So I think I'll take that answer as no. There's no overall liability to overall income guidance. It's just a 5% of operating budget towards capital and debt.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chuck Robinson, Precinct 6. I just have a question. What's a parking kiosk? Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Maltese?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So a parking kiosk is essentially a machine where you're allowed to pay for time to park in a parking lot. So as part of the recommendation that the park committee presented to the select board, there's two recommendations to purchase essentially 4 kiosks in total, but two kiosks per parking lot to help ease the parking issues in the downtown.
Thank you. Further discussion? Oh, yes, over on the far right.
Nancy, Dr. Precinct 1. I actually had 2 questions. One, to follow up on the previous speaker. I had wanted to know what the prices were going to be for the parking, if they were increased or changed, and what lots they were. And then the other question was if you could say which school or schools the replacement doors and windows, and was this separate from the security features that the schools all went through? Thanks.
Mr. Maltese?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So on the kiosk, there's 4, and one parking lot is the one behind CVS, and the other parking lot is the one behind 50 Haven Street, and you know, for ease of operation, for reliability sakes, it is highly recommended to implement 2 of them, because if one goes down, you want to have a backup essentially. So it is part of the park committee recommendations, and what is being presented is the following. So up to 1 hour of parking would be free. Up to 4 hours of parking would be $1 per hour, and more than 4 hours of parking in these 2 lots would be $5 per hour.
Okay. Further discussion?
Second question.
Oh, second question.
Joe,
Okay.
I don't know if you got an answer to that question. Second question was windows.
That would be for door and window replacement at Birch Meadow and Eaton, the 2 older elementary schools.
Okay. Further discussion? Yes, on the edge, yes.
I'm speaking for this doctor. It was the follow-up part of that question was the money that we had encumbered a couple years ago for security upgrades to the schools. So the doors and windows were, these are presumably doors and windows that weren't part of that security, or can that money not be used for them?
Can that be answered? Okay.
Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize he hadn't quite finished. I'll come right back to you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So the security project was for security devices on doors and windows. This is actually replacing like door frames and doors themselves. And we do those through our operating budget generally, but they are high dollar items. So this would be to target specific areas that have, you know, rotted door frames and things like that.
Okay.
Okay?
Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. In regards to the school doors and windows and some other stuff, where does Killam fit in all of this? Because Killam is a disaster. We have, I think, asbestos caulking on the windows, and just seems to be pushed off to the side, deferred all the time.
Mr. Maltese?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I am excited to report that we have been led into the MSBA process for replacement of the entire school, right? So we had a call this morning, actually, with the MSBA, which is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which would pay for 46% roughly of a full replacement of the school. So we are chasing that pretty hard in conjunction with our school committee, our superintendent, because we agree with you. It is a high priority project for us as a team, and we hope to be coming to November town meeting to request the initial funding for the project. So I don't know if that's answer your question.
No, that does. And will that rebuild try to increase capacity?
That is absolutely something we'll try to do. Of course, it's a cost-benefit analysis, right? I mean, we want to build a school that is competitive and it's not over budget, right? So we'll try to do it as best as we can, as reasonably as we can.
You know, our elementary schools were, at least when my kids were in elementary school, they're out of elementary. We're getting very crowded. Next, it seems like I've been a town meeting member for a while now. It seems like the Birch Meadow Master Plan just sort of got indefinitely tabled, something that would really benefit the entire community. I know some things got proceeded on, replacing Turf 1, Turf 2 got replaced, the lights got put up to meet the MIAA standards. But there's a whole other part of that, lighting Morton Field, lighting Little League Majors Field, and a central kiosk and restrooms and everything else that would benefit thousands of people in this community. That seems to be laid off the table for a while now, too. Years now.
Mr. Maltese.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. I could not agree with you more. So it is a project that it's a high priority for us. Town meeting in November approved the $150,000 to start a design of Birch Meadow of what we are calling Phase 1, right? So it is essentially the walkway, a lacrosse wall, a building with bathrooms and with a picnic area and the parking lot. So
I've seen, I saw conceptual plans.
Beautiful.
Years ago, it seems.
Yes. So the approach is essentially we are approaching the ARPA committee, the Reading ARPA committee that is focusing on the ARPA funds, and I am very hopeful that we will we'll be able to use some ARPA funds to really start this project.
Yeah, I'd love to see this project started up. You know, I think it would benefit a lot of people in the community. Thank you.
Completely agree with you.
Further discussion? None appearing? Where? Oh, in the back, I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Shirley Jia from Precinct 6. I don't believe the question asked by the lady was answered. Based on what law the parking was authorized? Because I don't remember voting to authorize the parking charge.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the changing in parking regulations is governed by the policy of the select board, right? So it is not a state law. It's a local policy. So actually on the last meeting for the select board, we received a very thorough presentation from the resident committee that has been working on this for close to a year. And on the next meeting for the select board, which is on May 3rd, I do expect that the select board is going to have a vote on the proposals that have been presented by the park committee.
So excuse for my ignorance. Basically, you said the select board has a right to charge the Reading resident without any vote for our parking in our own town.
So the all parking regulations in the town of Reading are managed by policy by the select board. That is correct.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Ventura?
Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. I agree that we shouldn't be charging residents to park in town. I'd like to amend the warrant article to remove that budget item, if I may.
Can we have that put on the screen? Oh, okay, working on it.
You're good. Yeah. So the request is to remove in FY22 the $110,000 cost for the parking kiosk. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't think we should charge to park uptown, and I think it'll hurt some of the local businesses up there.
Okay. Have we got your proposed amendment up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Good.
Mr. Moderator, can I just say
sure.
one more
Mr.
thing?
Yes.
So just to clarify, right? The park committee is a board that is made up of residents, of local business owners, and has been looking at ways to improve what is a regular complaint item in the downtown. And on the April 19th meeting, a very thorough presentation was given, and a lot of outreach was conducted to the local business owners, and my understanding is that the main issue with parking downtown is turnover, right? So people coming, and either parking in the lots and hopping on the commuter rail, or something else. So the implementation of the kiosk is really a way to change behavior, right? I mean, and we don't think that it's going to be a big revenue generator, but what we do think is that it's going to really encourage residents, visitors to not park in these parking lots, for 8 hours because they can.
It'll persuade me to go somewhere else because I don't want to park, go find a kiosk to go get lunch, dinner, something to shop at. Anyways, we'll see.
Is there a second to that, by the way? Second, okay. Further discussion? Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. I agree with Mr. Ventura. You're never going to solve the parking problem in Reading. Route 28 was finished in 1930. 1931, people started complaining about the speeding and lack of parking downtown, and that's the year I was born, so nothing's been changed since then.
Okay, keep in mind we're now discussing the proposed amendment on the far right, and I'll come back to you after that, Mr. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tara Giardina, Precinct 3. I just want to clarify the whole parking thing so that we all understand exactly what it means, because my understanding was the first hour is free, correct?
That is correct.
And then additionally, after that, every hour is how much?
So every hour after that is $1 per hour.
And then after 4 hours, it goes to?
$5 per hour.
All right, just so that everyone understands that the first hour is free.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Doxer?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark Doxer, Precinct 1, and Chair of the Select Board. I see now that it would have been very helpful to have more of an in-person, I think, state of the town discussion. But since we haven't started with that, let me give a little bit of background on Park and what's going on here. So for several years, we've had an issue with parking downtown. And the businesses downtown have not been able to get the parking spots they want for businesses to come through. And quite a bit of analysis has been done, actually over several years, to take a look at what might be some good solutions to this. The Select Board formed a committee called Park about a year ago after hearing quite a bit of discussion about what might be the best arrangement for businesses and residents. And this was a very broad committee made up of businesses in town, residents in town, commuters, folks that were all using these parking places and all using the downtown facilities. And they had a series of public hearings, quite a few public hearings, in fact, I don't know the exact number, but quite a few, and solicited input to try to understand this issue, to try to figure out what might be the best solution to it. And what we have learned from actually previous studies and from the Park Committee is that there actually are enough parking spots downtown to take care of most of our needs. However, the allocation and how they're used is not happening correctly. And one of the biggest issues seems to be the two main lots, the one behind CVS and the one on Brandy Court. We did a study, a Nelson Nygaard study, I'm not remembering, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago now, that had recommended also that we need to reallocate things. And I know I see Julie Mercier, she wants to stand and speak also, which would be great, did quite a bit of work to look at what would be a really good solution for this. And one of the biggest parts of the solution is to help find spaces for employees to park outside of those core downtown spots so that people can park there. And I won't give you a full summary of the report because I can't do it off the top of my head, but there's some great information that highlighted how long most people park downtown, how many errands they tend to do downtown, and it was looked at very methodically to figure out what would be the best way to take care of this issue. And what they came back with was to monitor the parking at those two lots, and that's the reason for these parking kiosks, and to set it up so that people who tend to stay just for an hour would get that time for free. And then beyond that, there would be the ability to stay longer. And if you wanted to park all day, I guess you could, but you'd be paying a very substantial fee for doing that. So hopefully that would encourage the behavior we're looking for. Also, to have enforcement to be able to make sure that those regulations are enforced so that the people that want to shop downtown are able to do that. So the bottom line here is that going through the park committee, the course of action they've recommended based on all those hearings is to set up this parking kiosk program. They've got a solution that uses license plate numbers in terms of how to get information to make it easy. You'd be able to use it like for those people who park in downtown Boston. You don't actually have to be at the spot if you want to get more time on it. It's possible to do that. It runs, I believe, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or 10 to 5? 8 to 5, sorry, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So evening hours and things like that is not covered, as well as weekends. And it was a very thoughtful solution to the situation. So I wanted to share that. So thank you.
Ms. Mercier, did you have a comment?
Hi, Julie Mercier, Community Development Director, Town of Reading. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Fidel and Mark did a great job. I just want to clarify for everyone in the room, and I know the park committee members here have heard me say this many times. You get an hour free if you stay for an hour or less. So if you stay for more than an hour, you pay for every hour that you're there. So that's all I want to say. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. And also, all of the on-street parking will still be free.
Okay, further discussion. Mr. Arena?
John Arena, Precinct 1. Mr. Maltese, I understand the capital investment. Is there a pro forma looking at anticipated revenues or operating costs to maintain these? What's the 10-year life cycle cost of these machines and the 10-year revenue projection? Do we have any?
So we don't have any specific data for Reading because we never charge for parking, but the park committee has looked at other towns that have implemented, and how they measure it is payback, right? So how quickly we are going to make this money back. On average, it can be less than 1 year, but you know, to be conservative, the park committee said, you know, probably 2 or 3 years of payback.
And what do you think the operating cost is annually to maintain software updates, you know, collect cash or collect whatever maintenance you got to do? Is there assessment for what that impact is on the budget?
Yeah, we don't expect that it's going to be a lot. So it's an outsourced company, right? So it's and you see this in other places. And you know, I've been to Rockport, for example, and they're on the actual sidewalk, right? I mean, they're solar powered, right? So there's no excavating of electricity or outages or things like that. And you know, if one is down, because we have a second one, is not urgent. So a fix can wait until, you know, a technician is able to look at them. And those towns that did assess the payback did incorporate these costs. To answer your question, we believe that the maintenance cost is going to be nominal or minimal, and whatever cost is created will be paid for by the revenues that are generated.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, Liz was pointing out that these kiosks are for two specific areas, right? You know, the 2-hour parking on Main Street and in other streets will not be changed, and there's no, you know, massive rollout of kiosks that are happening. It is for two specific parking lots that, after a lot of research and conversations with the businesses, and as Mr. Doctor explained, it is a recommendation.
Mr. Robinson, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay, good. Yes, right up in the middle. Yes, right there, you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Vanessa Alvarado, Precinct 5. First, I'd like to thank the park and the select board and the staff for all the work they've done. I know parking has been a big discussion point for many years now. However, I agree with Mr. Ventura. I am concerned about the cost of this installation as well as the ongoing maintenance and staff costs. Going forward, we'll be subject to any ongoing contract changes with the vendor. Frankly, you know, we aren't a city. We're not Andover with cute little boutiques. We aren't Salem that has witches. You know, we really struggle to get people to come to Reading. I'm worried that this is going to be a costly installation for us, and I will be approving this amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, right next to the microphone. And I'll move over there.
And how much are we going to pay for the people who will...
Could you state your name and precinct?
Oh, I'm sorry. Stephen Cool, Precinct 6.
Thank you.
And what will be the cost of the people necessary to go around during the day and check the little pieces of paper on the dashboards of the car to make sure that someone has gone to the kiosk, and then, you know, they have to look at the license plate if it looks like the car has overstayed the paid amount. How much is that going to cost us?
Mr. Maltese.
Thank you, sir. So the town meeting has approved a parking enforcement officer already, right? And I believe that officer is budgeted at 28 hours per week. We are recommending that the hours be increased to 32 hours a week. So the net increase is low. So to answer your question, it is not a significant cost. But I have heard that you know, that any change requires enforcement, unfortunately, and you know, behavior change will only happen if it's tied to enforcement. So the net change of all the parking changes is nominal. Is taking an employee who's already hired and is on board and works for the Reading Police Department and is adding 4 hours of time. We would recommend that increase whether we do kiosks or not.
So what in dollars is it going to cost us for this 32 hours a week, loaded, you know, with benefits and all that? What's it going to cost us?
I would have to make the math. I mean,
well, throw out a figure. What's your estimate? You're the town manager.
Sure.
How much does it cost us for such a person per hour, typically?
Yeah, I mean, so this person that we hired, actually, he started 2 weeks ago. He's a retired mailman, and he's walking around already. So how much does it cost?
Sorry, I don't care what his background is. How much does it cost us?
Let the town manager finish when you ask him the question. Go ahead, Mr. Maltese.
Sure. 1 second. Sharon is looking it up, I think. Sure.
Ms. Amendola, do you have the answer? Thank you.
Hi, Deputy Chief Amendola. For my math, it would add $84 a week to his salary. And I don't know if Sharon had. Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
We already have a full-time parking, oh, not full-time, 28-hour parking. To make it 32 hours would add $84 a week. He doesn't have to go around looking at the slips. Part of this technology would be a handheld device that will show him who's over time. So it would
Okay.
really help our accuracy in giving out parking tickets as well.
And how, what's your estimate as to how, what the revenues would be from the parking and the fines from overtime parking?
So the fine is still just going to stay $20 of anybody over any limit. That's what we've always had. It's $20. We get up to between we make a lot, off of parking tickets. So we're looking to try to change that. People really don't leave the parking lot, so.
Well, I've got to say, I do support the gentleman's amendment.
Okay, further discussion? Are you at the mic? You ready to speak? Okay.
Yep. Matt Sullivan, Precinct 3. Move the question.
Okay, are you moving it on just the amendment, the proposed amendment?
To move the question.
Oh, for the entire?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that is non-debatable. Is there a second? Second. Now, this is a motion to end debate on the entire motion, not just the proposed amendment. So I will need... Point of order? What's the point of order?
If we only discuss the amendment, and then that you would point of order and discussion on just the amendment because it hasn't been opened up to the rest. We focus on this amendment, right? One issue at a time.
Well, he has made the motion to end debate on the entire motion, so you should vote accordingly how you feel about that. So right now, this motion, if it carries, will end debate on the entire motion under Article 4, the amendment and the main motion. I need 4 counters. Mr. Brown, would you take the right side plus the Finance Committee? Another point of order? Yes? Yes. No. We would then proceed to vote on the amendment, and following that, we would vote on the main motion. It doesn't end voting on the motion. It just ends debate on the motion. Another point of order? Can you go to the mic? We're actually having trouble hearing you.
Jason Clark, Precinct 3. So if I'm correct, if we vote on the whole motion, then that precludes any discussion about any of these other things up here.
If you vote to end debate, it'll preclude all discussion on Article 4.
Anything, not just the parking.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Okay, Mr. Brown, thank you very much. Let's see. Mr. O'Neill, could you take the right piece of the middle section? Where I think there's a wire going down over to the wire. And let's see, who have we got? Ms. Whiteland, would you like to be a counter for me? Okay, you'd take from the camera over to the left of your section. And Mr. Robinson, would you take your section plus the select board? All right, all those in favor of ending debate, please rise. This requires a 2/3 vote, by the way. Ten? 4?
7.
7?
9.
9. And now all those opposed to ending debate, please rise. Did we have a wheelchair? Okay. We had a person in a wheelchair who wanted to make sure she was counted. I'm not sure where she is. Oh, okay. Great. Okay.
18.
18?
34.
34?
34.
34? 40. Okay, the vote is 30 in favor and 126 in the opposition, so debate is not ended. We will now continue debate. Further discussion? Ms. Whitelam?
Liz Whitelam, Precinct 4, also member of the Park Committee. So I'd love to clarify a few things. The Park Committee has been meeting low these many months. We have had at least 10, if not more, public meetings where we have received much input. As indicated, the committee itself is made up of residents, business owners, commuters. We have definitely taken into account many perspectives. We had a survey to the entire town. We have also built upon previous data from previous surveys. And while there is no one single easy right answer for parking, it is our collective majority belief that the proposal we have put forth is the most effective and likely successful solution. So the parking kiosks are not a hill that I would die on and be like, I will not ever rest again if we don't have parking kiosks in these lots. Is it what we think is going to solve the largest part of the perceived problem downtown? It is. This was not a decision entered into lightly. We didn't just say, hey, what the heck, let's just start charging people money. We knew there would be reaction. I strongly recommend you going back and looking at some of the meetings, reading the presentation, asking any of us on the park for details. There's more to the proposal than the kiosks. There's a lot about parking permits for employees, making different spaces, changing some of the on-street parking to create more availability, and so on and so forth. This is just the one part of the proposal that needs funding and therefore is in front of town meeting. As indicated before, the cost of these kiosks we anticipate will be earned back from the kiosks within 1 to 3 years, so it's kind of a net wash, and then the kiosks should then fund any maintenance and hopefully will ultimately contribute to the cost of the parking enforcement officers that, regardless of whether we have kiosks or not, are imperative to any successful parking program in town. So that's a cost that exists regardless. I think that's it. We think the kiosks are a good idea. First hour is free. All street parking remains free. Nobody is looking to move kiosks or any other paid parking anywhere else. Anywhere else, just these 2 lots. Because this is the place where, frankly, employees and people who shouldn't be taking up the parking for customers and people coming in and out are just sitting too long. So that's all. Thanks.
Further discussion? Mr. Sasso?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Sasso, Precinct 2. So I actually did have an opportunity to watch some of the meetings. So a couple quick questions. First of all, does the Select Board intend to maintain the Park Committee beyond the activities that are going on at the moment?
Do we have an answer?
Go ahead.
Mr. Doxer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What we did at our last meeting is we extended the committee until the end of July, so that's the anticipated timeframe.
Okay. So the reason I ask is that one of the other things I did hear during one of the meetings was there was a lot of back and forth about the particulars of the cost, if you will, how many hours, how much time, et cetera. And I suspect you're probably going to get a lot of good data from the kiosks as well. So I'm curious if the board was considering to actually have that information reviewed and potentially make changes moving forward, because again, as the last speaker just said, there's been a lot more than just those 2 things that are going on. There's other things in the background. So I just want to make sure that if you do this, that you actually have the mechanism for continuing to review this and update over time. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Doxer again.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Absolutely is the answer. I think one of the additional benefits of having this data is we can see how effective it is. We can see how long people are parking. We can make adjustments. The system is extremely flexible, and different communities have had different experiences. I think one of the most important aspects of it, though, is to get the real benefit in terms of encouraging employees and others that were parking there all day. And we had a big issue with contractors during a lot of the construction times, is to have the opportunity to encourage people who want to make transactions, have food, buy things, do things in town. The spot should be reserved for them. And if we start expanding the number of hours that are free, the benefits of that start to shrink. So the committee has thought a lot about this. I think this is a very good and the right first attempt at it, and we'll learn, and we'll see what to do from there.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, on the edge. Oh, Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Barry Berman, Precinct 6. I agree with my friend Bill Brown. We've had a parking problem in Reading since 1931, or since they made cars. The problem is, but the issue is that this is the first time we actually have a solution. And I don't think that is something that'll always be a problem. The town got together and put all the stakeholders together. Downtown businesses, residents, commuters, everybody who has a stake in this, and they actually came up, they agreed on something, right? They agreed on something. And so I think that we need to honor those that volunteer hours and give this thing a try. I, for one, I don't really care if we recover the $110,000. In fact, I hope we don't. It means that it's working. It means that people are actually rotating through those lots and not getting tickets. I think that's a small price to pay, right, to solve some of the parking problems. And guess what? If it doesn't work, at least people can say, you did something, you tried, okay? And so I think I want to commend the select board. I want to commend all the people who, those countless hours. This thing has been going on for 100 years. We have a solution. Will it work? Who knows? But at least we can then give it we can give it a try. So I, for one, am not going to support the amendment, and I hope you don't as well. Thank you.
Further discussion? And people who haven't speak over, right? Oh, Mr. Haley, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you next. Mr. Haley? And then I'll come to you next, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. Yeah, after being on Park for these past couple months and whatnot, the town isn't looking to make money off these parking spots. It's more about getting people in and out to move to the outer portions and have spots for everybody on the inner section to be able to actually park at. Having the kiosks themselves is just the foundation that we can build upon. We can make everything free 6 months from now. We can charge 50 cents, $1. The point is, we would have the foundation to be able to change that to whichever way the data is going. If more people are complaining about XYZ, we'll be able to change it. The only way that happens is if the kiosks are there in the first place. Because if they're not, there's no plan B to this. There's no parking garage coming. There's no nothing. So the parking issues will still happen. The parking enforcement officer will be writing lots of tickets, and you will still have no spots unless something is done with this. So the 110 is on the high end as well. The numbers coming in are a lot less than that, surprisingly, but the number still in the budget is the 110 mark. So hopefully, the parking committee did put a lot of time into this, a lot of hearing from residents. The only qualms is mainly the pricing and whatnot, but that can be adjusted at any point between town staff or the select board. But the foundation has to be there, and without that, we're all out of luck. So thank you.
The gentleman at the microphone.
Philip Dardino, Precinct 3. Move the question of the amendment.
Okay, this time we've asked to end debate on the amendment only. Is there a second? Second. All right, it's non-debatable. Again, I ask my counters if they are available. All those in favor of ending debate on only the amendment, please rise.
$27.
People up the back that are town meeting members, looks like you did, but you need to come down to vote. It looks like most of you have. I just want to make sure you know you have to do that. I'm sorry, could you repeat those numbers? 33, 43, 42,
29.
29. All right. All those opposed to ending debate on the proposed amendment, please rise.
3.
7.
3.
3, 3, and 7.
We have 3, 3, and 7. What was the other number? There were 4 numbers. We had 3, 3, and 7. Do you remember what your numbers were? Mr. Brown, what was yours? 3. 3. 3. Oh, so 3, 3, 3, and 7. Okay.
147 and 16.
Okay, the vote's 147 in the affirmative, 16 in the negative. The motion has carried, and debate is ended on the proposed amendment. We will go straight to the vote on the amendment. But first, I have had a request that people at the microphones, if you could speak a little more directly into it, at home, they're having trouble hearing you. Okay, so we are now going to vote on the proposed amendments. That's only a majority vote, so all those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the motion does not carry. We will now return to debate on the main motion under Article 4. Is there further discussion? Oh, yes, over here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom O'Rourke, Precinct 2. I wonder if we could get just a quick summary of the towns. Obviously, there was some benchmarking conducted. I mean, the towns that you did talk to, what was their, they have a similar situation, and what was the result? And if you could name a couple of towns, it might be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Maltese?
Go ahead, Julie.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we've spoken to parking and traffic officials in Waltham, Andover, and Arlington. And we are in the process of vetting different vendors for the kiosks.
Mr. O'Rourke?
So, did they have positive feedback, or what? You know, would they have a similar situation that we're trying to resolve?
Sure, yes, thank you. I'm glad you repeated your question because I missed the whole question. So yes, they gave a lot of great feedback, lessons learned. One of the main things, and I know that we've said tonight that we're not in this for the money, and those towns felt the same way when they implemented paid parking, but they've actually been surprised at the revenue that they have been able to generate. And in some cases, they've created a parking benefit district, which is legislation that enables them to put those funds directly back into the area where the revenue is being generated to help improve their downtowns.
I guess just a final question: the issue of behavior modification. Did they find that that was so that the behaviors of the residents and visitors changed?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. They haven't had much success using the back office reporting to look at trends for how the parking has been utilized and whether any changes are needed. So we're actually looking to try to have a pretty robust back office reporting system so that we can run reports and really see if the proposed behavioral changes are happening and if any tweaks would be needed down the road, which would be looked into and overseen by the internal staff working group known as the Parking Traffic Transportation Task Force.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Did I see a hand right on the edge here? Yes.
I'm Cheryl Lestrade. I'm from Precinct 5. Everyone's looking at this as a bad thing. I don't really think it's a bad thing if we think about the businesses in our community that are suffering because they can't generate revenue because other people are taking up the parking spots all day long. So the customers are going elsewhere. If we look at it like that and we think about our neighbors, I think you would see the positive in it as opposed to all the negativity in it.
Further discussion? Yes, over on the right.
Doug Bruce, Precinct 3. Didn't we just end debate on this?
Well, we had a debate on the proposed amendment.
On the amendment, but we're still talking about parking.
Well, it's still part of the main motion now. Yes.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, in the far? Yes.
Tara Giardina, Precinct 3. Sorry, I just want to clarify because there's a few questions. How does this kiosk work is what one of them is asking, and I am curious too. Is it an app or is it actually cash?
Thank you, Ms. Giardina. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So what we are looking at right now are kiosks that can take multiple different forms of payment. So you've probably seen in other towns that you can do it with an app. The MBTA uses the Pay by Phone app. We're currently working to set up a meeting with Pay by Phone so we can understand how their pricing works and the terms of their contracts and things like that. We are also looking to enable people to use bills, coins, and credit cards. Those come with various challenges in terms of maintenance and cards getting stuck, bills getting stuck. So we're still trying to sort of understand the whole landscape of what's available before we figure out what path to go. But the goal is we would try to make these to be as accessible to as many people as possible.
Okay, because that seems to be a concern. It's not inclusive for, all age groups that might not be friendly with. The other thing is, how would we know, like when you're doing it, that the first hour is free? Would you still have to register? Okay, and
Right.
how would it know that you're over the hour, per se?
Right. So if when you park, you need to interface with the kiosk in some way, even if you're staying for less than an hour. You need to let the kiosk know that, right? Okay. So that it has your license plate, so that when enforcement comes around, they know that that's your plan, and that you have interfaced with the kiosk. I'm sorry. What was the second part of your question?
Just how would it know that you were there longer than an hour, basically?
Sure. So, typically if you go up to it and you pay for a certain amount of time, and then it'll show that it's expired, right? If you use the app, the Pay by Phone app, you actually plug in your license plate, and then when you're near the location where you want to park, if you have your location settings enabled on your phone, it'll show you the meter that's nearby, the kiosk that's nearby, and you pick it. You pick which car you're in, like which license plate you're using, and then you plug in how much time you want to stay, and it'll actually tell you what the regulation is at that time, and how much it costs before you go and pay to park. And then if you're getting up against your time, you can, on your phone from your restaurant or your hair salon, you can add more time.
All right. And is there a period of time that it stops? Like after 6 o'clock it's free, or is it 24/7?
Right, so the proposal is for the regulations to be consistent with our traffic enforcement officer's schedule, right? So 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, which is consistent with the regulations that are downtown currently.
Okay, thank you for answering my question. Sorry it took so long.
Further discussion on the motion under Article 4? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Over here is fine.
Hi, Mary Ann Downing, Precinct 4. I'm not sure if Mr. Arena touched on this, but I wanted to ask, are these the only costs associated, the purchase of the kiosks? Is there any kind of long-term agreement that we're bound with for this company? And if in a few years we determine this isn't giving us the results we want, we can get out of it and the only sunk costs are the $10K, or are we bound by anything else? That's my first question.
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Ms. Downing. That's a great question. So this is a capital expense, right? So if we decide in a few years that we don't want the kiosk, we own them, we have them. The other terms of contracts for the mobile app and for the any other aspects of the system that we have contracts with, we would have to see what those terms are and how long we're obligated to them. But in terms of their capital costs, it would just be the kiosks.
Further discussion on the motion under Article 4?
I just had one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
So the reason why I asked is because I know Medford had an experience where they had kiosks and they were stuck in a long-term agreement and had to pay a lot of money to get out of it with their manager. My other question is just in terms of the communities that you compared us to, because you mentioned Arlington, Andover, and Waltham, and they're communities that have significantly larger downtowns than Reading and larger populations. I was just looking, I know Andover's like 35,000, Arlington's 42, and I didn't get a chance to look up Waltham. Did you look at any smaller communities with downtowns that are kind of more on the scale of ours to see, or were those the only communities that you looked at? Thank you, that's my only other question.
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you again, Ms. Downing. So those are the 3 communities we've looked at so far. We are still in the process of understanding lessons learned and vetting vendors. So if there are any other communities that you know of that you would like us to look at, please, by all means, let me know.
Mr. Arena? Mr. Arena, before we get to there,
Sorry, I just wanted to answer your question. We do not get into contracts longer than 3 years with anybody at the town level. And also, when we first looked into it years ago, we also looked at Newburyport and some of the smaller towns that do have kiosks as well.
Thank you. All set? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ms. Mercier, a couple questions. Does the vendor offer a means in year one to acquire or rent the unit to kind of a try before you buy? Is there any other financing arrangement short of a capital purchase? And I'll ask and then the second question is the pay by phone a complement to the kiosk or is it an alternative to the kiosk?
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Arena. So the leasing option is not something we have explored, and so I can for sure look into that. None of the vendors so far have mentioned that option to us. I mean, obviously they're trying to make a sale, but I will look into that. The Pay by Phone app works hand in hand with the kiosk. It's just offering another way for people to pay for parking.
I see. So both the pay by phone uses the kiosk to register what you've entered so that the parking enforcement can see it.
Exactly.
I wasn't mentioning leasing per se, it's more a rent. So there's no long-term obligation of the sort Ms. Downing was referring to. Lastly, there are 4 units up here. As I understand it, there are 2 parking lots. What is the rationale to have 4 units distributed across 2 parking lots?
So when we had Nelson Nygaard do a study in 2018, based on the number of spaces in each lot, 2 kiosks per lot was what was recommended. Fidel brought up an interesting point earlier tonight that it actually helps with redundancy. If one kiosk is down, then you still have one in the lot. So you're not losing revenue the whole time that one kiosk would be down for that lot.
But that's negated by the pay by phone because there's no burden on the kiosk. Is that correct? If I'm playing with my phone, the kiosk registers it. I don't need to enter any data at the kiosk, so there's no time consumed on the part of the kiosk. There's not a queue in front of the kiosk trying to enter data. Everyone's entering their phone remotely by phone.
Right, that's correct. But I think if the kiosk's broken, then the pay by phone wouldn't be able to communicate with that specific kiosk.
Yeah, it's usually a bad selling message to say we got 4 because they might break. It's selling a negative. It usually doesn't work.
Right, so the main reason we want 4 is because of the number of spaces in each lot.
I got it.
So people don't have to.
Would Park entertain the concept of getting 2 to start and then seeing how it runs for a year and then deciding on the balance? I hate to be picayune, but there's enough conversation on this. We've already probably spent 45 minutes on this, but is there a way to kind of divide the baby here and look at 2 and put 2 later?
Right, so the park committee is the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee, so they're actually making these recommendations to the select board. So the select board still ultimately has to make the decision on whether they agree with paid parking as a policy and from a regulatory standpoint. I can't speak on behalf of Park whether they would be okay with going from 4 to 2, but that is definitely something that they could bring up at the select board hearing if they're interested.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Further discussion? None appearing? Up on the far corner here, yes? On the far corner, right here?
Yeah, I don't know if people can hear me without my...
Hold on 1 second. Didn't realize you...
I am now experiencing what people who have handicaps experience. And I know that some places who have had kiosks, I'm sorry, first of all, Ellen Childress, Precinct 3.
Oh, thank you.
Have had to get them modified for people who are handicapped. To me, parking right now, when I get to be able to drive again, and having to walk to a kiosk, and having to go back, presents a significant burden that's going to take lots of time. That would take me probably a good half an hour. So that's sort of a question for you to think about in placement and getting these. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is what happens during snow removal. Thank you.
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for that question. My understanding is if you have a handicap placard or hang tag, you actually can get free parking no matter where you park. The point is well taken, though, because there are probably a number of people that have similar challenges that may not have a handicap hang tag or a placard. And we will work with the vendors, the kiosk vendors, to try to make sure we are acquiring the most handicap-friendly and accessible kiosk that is on the market.
Further discussion? And people who haven't yet spoken, town meeting members, are you a town meeting member? You need to come down to be recognized, okay?
Shirley Jia from Precinct 6. I asked the question before. So my follow-up question was, what was the enforcement we have been taking for the violations? Since you said it's a behavior issue and repeated violations. Do we have data?
We can get you the data, but it's 20. Most violations besides parking and handicap or fire lane is a $20 fine. So that won't change. That's what we've always had.
So $20 fine, and for repeated offenders, they just keep paying $20 fine every day.
So
and it's a lot of money to pay every day.
Yeah, so what happened, we do not have any bylaw that says after 10 tickets this will happen. However,
yeah, but if you find me 20, sorry.
Ms. Jock, please
once
let her
you do
answer.
not pay your parking tickets, you will eventually become unregisterable at the RMV with your car and your license. So eventually you will have to come to the police station and pay. So there is enforcement at the end of the day that you have to pay these parking tickets.
Right, so you said repeated, so people have been paying $20 every day for a long period of time and still parking there.
Yes, like we get construction workers that laugh at $20. They say it's more money to park in Boston all day. So we do have repeat offenders. They think it's cheaper to just take the ticket all day long, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And my follow-up question was, so how we don't even have the parking rules and the kiosks, we already have people overtime for working for that.
No, we have a parking enforcement officer for the entire town. So his focus is on the train station, the downtown parking, and other areas in town. So that will not change. We're just asking for an increase in 4 hours in his
in the future?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we would ask it either way with the kiosk or not. We think we need more parking enforcement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Okay, I think you had a question down here? No, you're all set? Okay. Any other discussion? All right, I'm not, where? Oh, right in front of me. Ms. Whitelam.
Are we allowed to be talking about other things in this article?
Yes. Yes.
I would love to hear just a little background about the Rise Playground redesign, if I'm not sure to whom to ask that clarification.
Joe?
So the Rise.
Can you just state your name and position, just so?
Sorry, Joe Huggins, Director of Facilities, Town of Reading. The playground at the Rise Preschool was installed in 2007, and it's at the end of its useful life. The money you're seeing in the capital plan is for us to design a new play surface next year, and then bid it out the following year. That's how we try to stagger our projects, so we're ready to bid in the following year.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Am I missing anybody? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? All right, this requires a majority vote, so we will take a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion under Article 4, the main motion, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 5, Mr. Maltese.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Next. There you go. All right, so as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Article 5 builds on Article 4, and if you'll see on the second line, the total for our FY22 operating budget is listed as 145, which was just approved. So I'll just go through the items. So essentially, how this presentation is broken up by by funding line. So on the first line is the benefits line. Essentially, we are tracking an under spends in health insurance of $650,000. We are recommending that $250,000 of that savings is allocated to OPEB, to our OPEB liability, and that essentially results in a decrease of $400,000 for that line. On the third line, we are tracking a savings in our vocational education line of $30,000. In the fourth line, we are requesting that town meeting replenishes the FinCon reserves that have been used. So you know the COVID test line will be paid by the ARPA funds. We are essentially asking that the FinCon reserve be replenished, and this money will be paid back by ARPA. We so far haven't heard of any reasons to come back to FinCom, so any items that is not spent in this line will fall to free cash. In G91, there's essentially a series of items that result in a net increase of $49,000. Next slide, Jackie. Okay. Lines G91, again, it's a similar expenses. One thing to note is that the fiber network repair line, you'll see in three different lines in G91, and then for the same amount in the enterprise budgets. H92, we are requesting that we obtain $100,000 for two specific projects. One is the housing production plan, and the next item is a community envisioning process of town-owned land. J91 is our public safety wages, and we are requesting a total of $150,000 for that line. K93 is $25,000 to fund scanning, as essentially of our public health records, and also the implementation of a software program that will make the inspection process for our health inspectors be electronic. K92, we are requesting $15,000 to related to video detection, and $40,000 to fund the replacement of a cabinet that is in the downtown and is not up to code, and essentially lights a lot of the power for the Christmas lights downtown. K93 is our snow and ice line, and every year we underfund that typically, and we come back to town meeting. Right now, we are projecting a $200,000 need in that line. Knock on wood, it's not going to be snowing any further this year, and that line will stay in place. Once you take the savings and the increases, we are requesting that an additional $468,000 be funded in Article 5 from free cash. Then we go to the enterprise budgets. You will see the $400,000 item there, which again was part of Article 4, as well as the $150,000 from S99 that was part of Article 4 again. I mentioned that fiber network repairs are split up in 3 different funding areas, and finally we are requesting $26,000 for sewer rate study. That brings a total of net operating budget of $588,000 for FY22 in the enterprise budgets, and you see the split there at the bottom of how it's split between water and sewer. Thank you.
The FinCom report. Mr. Coram.
Jeffrey Coram, Precinct 7 and Finance Committee. At our meeting of March 15th, 2022, the Finance Committee voted 6-0 to recommend this article to town meeting.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Maltese, the COVID inspection, the COVID test in F99, is that the expense to administer the test or the cost of the tests themselves?
So that was a one-time fee to purchase kits. So it is take-home kits that we purchased, and we are distributing to
Very
residents.
Good. Thank you. The K92 expense, the West Woburn video detection, is that a repair of an existing asset, or is that the purchase of a new asset?
Ryan Percival will take that on.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi, how are you? Ryan Percival, Town Engineer. That is a replacement of a video detection control unit. We had a power surge that fried it.
Thank you. So it's not a new function, it's just replacing what already exists?
Yeah, we're on straight timing right now, so that intersection's not properly efficient.
Great, thank you. And lastly, on the K93, my understanding historically is this: since this line was subject to reimbursement by the state, we customarily underfunded it by intention. Is that still the practice? And if so, why are we funding this line tonight?
So K93 is our snow and ice line, right? And by statute, it is the only line that we're allowed to
Underfund.
To spend over, I guess, to go into deficit, right? But at the end of the year, as we close our books, we must appropriate the amount that was actually spent on the line.
Is this line still subject to state reimbursement? And if so, when would it feed into the budget? Is it a year in arrears, 2 years in arrears?
So K93 is the no and ice line?
In a few years ago, this line was reimbursed by the state for certain towns. There was reimbursement available by the state. That may no longer be the case.
Yeah, so the state typically reimburse for specific events, right? So and it's usually when an emergency is declared, right? So we did have a major storm this year I believe it was January, where a state of emergency was declared, but our county essentially did not meet that threshold for reimbursement.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chuck Robinson, Precinct 6. What was the thought process to not just put the whole savings and health insurance into OPEB? And where are we with OPEB at this point? I know we're still way off, but why not put it all in there?
Yeah, I mean, and Sharon can certainly chime in as well. I mean, we felt that with the impact of COVID-19, right? I mean, we felt that we have a few other asks, if you will, right? So in FY23, we are going back to funding OPEB to $500,000 a year, which we haven't done since FY20, right? So we feel pretty confident that in FY23 we're going to get back on track, right? And this request it was essentially we didn't want to get too aggressive on funding OPEB, given the other requests that are before you.
Can I?
Yes, continue.
So by not being aggressive, that's just going to flow to free cash, though, correct? If you're not using it all for something else, it's going to flow into free cash.
So what we're saying here, right, is that we underspent in health insurance by $650,000. We are shifting that savings, a portion of that savings, $250,000 to OPEB. The remainder of that savings, right, will fund some of the requests that are before you today. So we can certainly shift all of it to OPEB, but the increase at the bottom of this page of 468 would go up accordingly.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Whoa. Okay. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. Hi, Mr. Maltese. You mentioned in K92 the electrical cabinet, and I'm speaking, I guess, perhaps more on the Historical Commission, something we've been speaking a lot about lately. If I understand it, that's the utility box. Is that the utility box that is at the corner of Woburn and Main Street? And I'm asking because I believe that's the utility box. I think the Historical Commission put the artwork on, the vinyl artwork on. So I just wanted to ask if that's going to be a replacement, and obviously I assume if that is the utility box, I assume that will affect the artwork that's on it. So I just wanted to have that confirmed, and if that's the case, I'd just like to ask that whoever is responsible work with the Historical Commission to try to save that artwork or have to install additional artwork. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. I'd like to move amendment, please, on line G91.
Okay.
I would like to move the total up to 51,000, adding 34, and making line 83,000 total. Then I'll have another amendment in a few moments.
Okay. Can we get that up on? Can we get that up on the screen? What was the number again, Mr. Brown?
It's G91, the town manager's termination salary. 17,000, I believe. Under service, at least the copy I have.
Okay. And you're changing it to? Just to make sure we get
I'd like to increase it by 34, making a total of 83.
Got that.
So increase it to 34,000 or by 84,000?
By 34, making a total to him 51.
51.
And the line item 83. If my math is correct. I'm a very poor speller, but I know how to add money.
Do we have it up there correctly?
What's that?
Is that, Mr. Brown, is that the, make sure, I want to make sure we got your amendment correct.
Yeah.
Okay. You want further discussion on that?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think if you people go back the history of the hours that Bob has put in this town, it's, to me, this 17,000 is a slap in the face. For you that may not know, when Bob's father was died down in, or getting ready to die down in Milton, Bob commuted every night down there to make sure his dad was fine. He'd come back every day to make sure this town was run. He walked into town meeting, in the town hall one morning on a Saturday. He did not have to be there. Luckily, he was. There was a water main break that would have cost us thousands and thousands of dollars because it was a long weekend. I think Bob is due this kind of money. And I'll leave it at there and let others make their debate one way or the other.
Is there a second to that motion? Second, okay. Okay, we're now discussing the proposed amendment. Discussion on the proposed amendment. We have a point of order?
Is it possible to have you just zoom in on the screen just a little bit? It's just really hard to read in the back.
Is that possible? Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, further discussion on this proposed amendment? Wait. Oh, scroll down. Okay. Oh, there we go. I can't really see it from here, so thank you. Okay, further discussion on the proposed amendment? Oh, it's up here, okay. No, I know, but I just until it's down. Okay, I'm sorry. And was there discussion over here on the aisle? Ms. Binder?
Thank you, Angela Binder, Precinct 5. By paying our previous town manager this termination pay, we are setting a precedent. I think everybody really needs to understand that we are setting a precedent and not following a precedent. Our first town manager, who served for 30 years, and I don't know the details of when he was with his family or when he wasn't, or the Saturday mornings that he worked, but I know that he was considered one of the best town managers in the state, and he served 30 years, and he did not get termination pay that was awarded to him above and beyond his contract. He was given what was given to him in his contract, and he did receive termination pay, but it was negotiated in his last contract. I've served as a union president for my municipal union, and I've negotiated 4 contracts, and I know that nobody gets anything without giving something up, and nobody gets everything they always want. So I just wonder, and maybe there are people here who negotiated, I think that I don't know what Peter would have asked for. I don't know what he would have been given. I do know that people want a higher base pay, a higher grade, a higher raise, because that goes into your retirement benefits. If you get a bonus, that doesn't count towards your retirement benefits. So it's better to get a higher raise than to just get money on top of it. I know that Bob received in his last contract a higher raise than Peter received in his last contract. So I think things balance off, and we don't know what was asked for, and we don't know all of the negotiations. Peter received what was in his contract, and that's it. And the select board had the same option to award him additional pay, and they didn't do that. They chose not to do that. I think that when we look at the charter, that we need to look at this again, because I know that the wording has changed. I know that the intent of it has changed, and what is termination pay or what is bonus pay, that needs to be looked at in the charter. This was discussed at the select board meeting. 5 select board members had different ideas going into it. They discussed it. They came to a compromise. They voted on it, and they approved $17,000. And it is ultimately their decision. So even if we say that, it's ultimately their decision. So I think I am going to support the decision that was made by the select board. I've thanked Bob. I think he's done a great job, and I'm going to support the decision that they made and award Bob $17,000. Thank you.
Further discussion on the far right, Mr. Halsey?
John Halsey, Precinct 1. To make a comparison between a base pay that was entered into 3 years ago compared to one that was entered into 12 years ago is kind of a exercise in pointlessness as far as I'm concerned. As time progresses, what ends up happening is base pays change, of course. But that's not the real issue here. The real issue here is doing the right thing at the right time. Now, I want to tell you something. Bob LaLasher did the right thing at the right time. He gave proper notice, 6 months' notice, as his contract called for. Now, at the time he gave that notice, he had more than ample sick time and vacation time to never step foot in the office again until his final day. But you know what? Bob did the right thing. Bob made a decision on behalf of this town. Bob came to work every day. And I say every day, I mean every day. There wasn't a day that went by that Bob didn't contribute to this town, particularly in the last 6 months that he was the town manager. And I know he went out of his way to try to counsel, mentor, and assist in the transition for Fidel. He did the right thing. And this organization should do the right thing for him. I applaud Mr. Brown's remarks and his suggestion. I will vote in favor of this, and I urge you to do, as Bob has done, the right thing.
Further discussion? Is there further discussion? I would ask that we not have any applause during the meeting. Yes, right on the edge here.
Cheryl Lestrade, Precinct 5. So every one of us go to work every day and we do our job. Some of us do it better than others, some of us more dedicated than others. But we all enter a contract, and at the end of the day, as long as we're doing our job, I'm not understanding why we're expecting a reward of, if he's being given more than he was contracted to get at the end, that's already in addition to what he was expecting to get. Why should we increase that? I don't support that.
Further discussion? Up on the edge, Mr. Ventura.
Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. I've been a town meeting member for probably 6 years now. And Bob was always 100% prepared, more than anyone. I know there was some conflict with the select board on what should be given contract. It's not outside of the box to go above and beyond the contract, especially as Mr. Halsey pointed out. So I'd like to ask each member of the select board how you voted and how you came up, each of you, what you presented for a sum for Bob at the end of the day.
Do we have any responses? Mr. Haley? Oh, point of order, I'm sorry. Can you use the microphone? I'm sorry.
It's a question. I've been here for...
Can you repeat her question, because we're not hearing her?
Oh, my question? I'd like each member of the select board...
Ms. Doctor,
her question.
we can't hear you. Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Nancy Doctor, Precinct 1, what is the relevance of this regarding Mr. Brown's amendment? He's asking for us to consider an amendment. What's all this extra hoopla about?
Mr. Ventura, are you finished, or you?
No, those who would like to answer can
you asked,
answer. Those who don't want to answer don't have to answer.
Well, I would ask, are there any select board members who would respond? Mr. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mark, for the question. It was my recommendation at the Select Board to do to have a formula to set precedent for the future. So this way here, there wouldn't be any, should we, shouldn't we kind of scenario. I wanted to go with 2 weeks base for any town manager that gives his notice of the 6 months that was required by his contract. And then 1 week for every year that they were the town manager. So the way that that would scale out, Bob would get 3 months and 1 week for his service to Reading. And like I said, that would just be just a framework for future select boards, et cetera, to work on with Fidel as well as the next town manager 30 years from now. So.
I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. I will support this. Again, I've seen Bob work, and we're in the financial situation we are now thanks to Bob over these years. And, we can do land grabs everywhere like we did at the last town meeting. I think Bob deserves this. Thank you.
Mr. Doxer?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark Doxer, Precinct 1, Chair of the Select Board. So the Select Board had considerable deliberations about what to do here. And there are different opinions, although we actually voted in a strong majority in terms of what we did here. Per the contract, there is no requirement of a bonus payment. There is an option that is up to the Select Board in terms of what to do. One of the things that I think is very important to think about here is that as we went through the last several years, the pandemic in particular, I think there were some stellar members of staff, multiple, who all really contributed to the safety and security of this community, and they made a big difference. And it can be in different parts of the staff, it can be at the school department, it can be all over the place. We don't really have an opportunity to reward them with a substantial amount of money or something like this without kind of spending an amazing amount of money. And I think that most important is that we view our jobs as how we do our jobs. I think most of us expect that if we do our job, we get paid for doing our job. We're a government organization. We're not a private institution. And we need to manage the funds of the town very, very responsibly, which is exactly what we try to do. When we had our meetings and deliberations about this, the ranges went from 3 months or so in terms of the amount that could be paid to just staying with the contract as it was. And it didn't seem that there was a clear majority that had a way in terms of how it would go forward. And I think one of the previous speakers mentioned I looked for a compromise that would allow for some payment to take place, a modest payment, that I thought would get the support of most of the board members, and that's exactly what happened. This is a decision that is left under the control of the Select Board in terms of how much to spend, if anything, and that's how we went about the process. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Bacci?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carlo Bacci, Precinct 5. I'm one of the board members that also supported 3 months for the exact same reason that Mr. Halsey and Mr. Brown and probably countless other stories that town staff could repeat. This is not up to town staff. It was up to the 5 of us. And it did range from 3 months to 0. And most of us agreed that we do want to give Bob something, but I fully supported 3 months, and that would coincide with Bill Brown's motion. Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm not sure who to direct this to. What was the total value of the sick time and vacation time unused that was turned back in to the town?
Do we have an answer? Sorry. Mr. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thanks, John, for the question. I believe it was 144,000.
So that's 144K that Mr. LaLasher could have rightfully, complying with every element of his contract, sat at home and taken, rightfully, as a benefit earned under the terms of his contract. True?
I believe that was the issue at hand. Is it was sick pay, so it's kind of a gray area. Whether
Was
or
all
not
of
it
it
wasn't vacation pay, he was already paid his vacation pay.
I see. I've had the pleasure of working under two town managers while I sat on the board. I particularly enjoyed Bob's wide-ranging ability to describe any problem in a few sentences to any individual. I don't regard this as a bonus. I don't regard this as anything other than a job well done. We had an exceptional town manager, and it's a shame, frankly, that for whatever reason, it wasn't seen fit to extend his contract further. But where we are today,
I'll go in next, yeah.
I fully support the motion on the floor.
Mr. Doxer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to clarify a few things. There's not an attempt to measure how good a job Bob did in terms of the discussion that's going on here. He did a very nice job for the town, as did Peter Heckenbachner before him. I think that the discussion is about the contract that was established and the expectation that people will do a good job. And I think if any of us in this room think about how we work, there's an expectation that we're going to do our job. I hope most of us in this room don't think about, hey, I think I'm going to just take all my sick pay before I leave. I don't think that's how most of us work. I know that Bob is not a person that would do that. He was paid out for vacation pay. He was paid out for the salary that was in the contract. That's how it was set up. There was a question about whether or not why his contract wasn't extended. Mr. LeLasher informed the town that he would be leaving the town. There was no discussion of a continuation of contract, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, on the back wall.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Caitlin Mercurio, Precinct 2. Do we have any other recent employees who have received a similar termination pay for comparison? And what are their roles and what's the termination pay?
Do we have an answer?
I am not aware of any. No. I mean, no. The answer is no.
Is this something that's typically you see in other towns reserved for top administrators? Do teachers receive it? I'm just trying to get a feel for what's common, if not in Reading, outside of Reading.
Mr. Maltese.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so our town council is pointing out that the language is part of our charter. To answer the question of what do other towns do, I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion. Up in the back row. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not in the back row. It just looked like it from here.
Alicia Williams, Precinct 8. I just want to give town meeting some context with the language that is in the town charter, because I actually have a quick little screenshot of it. Upon the termination of the town manager's appointment, whether voluntary or otherwise, he may receive termination pay as determined by the Board of Selectmen, not to exceed 12 months' salary in total. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, on the edge here. Oh, Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Barry Berman, Precinct 6. I think a member had asked, is there any other language in other town administrators? So I helped negotiate Bob's last contract. And as part of that process, I read probably 24 town manager or town administrator contracts that were in play at the time or had recently been done. And what was incredible is that a lot of these contracts were filled with things that sort of made the town manager's compensation less than transparent. different types of bonuses, different types of allowances, different kinds of things that sort of hid the salary line item. So when we were going through that, Bob was very clear, is that he wanted this contract to be transparent. He wanted it to be salary, something that would show up in the warrant book every year, that everybody could see. No tricks, no gimmicks, no hidden balls under the table. And we complied with that. When we negotiated Bob's contract, he was well under the median for town managers across the Commonwealth. How do I know that? Because I worked with the consultant that this board used to actually hire Fidel. And I got those contracts, and we could compare things. So when we gave Bob a little bit of a bump, it got him to the line. So there may not be a precedent in terms of other staff or other positions, but this body, there is a precedent for, I would just have you look at it under a different lens of gratitude and grace. When I first got on town meeting, probably 15, 17 years ago, there was a Reading police officer who was a member of the reserves that was deployed to Iraq. Military pay, friends, is a lot less than a police officer's pay. And his wife came and made a presentation to town meeting, and town meeting stood as one to basically agree that he was going to get paid his full police pay, even though the town was not required. It was not part of the collective bargaining. It was not in a contract. It was gratitude and grace. And I think if we look at it through that lens here, all of us had our relationships with Bob. I worked with him for a long time. I never met a smarter person or more humble person in this room. And Bob, if you're listening, turn it off, watch the Celtics game. I would like people, whether it's 17,000 or 51,000, I want you all to just look in your hearts and just say, what would we do with gratitude and grace? And then make your decision accordingly. Thank you.
Further discussion? Over here on the right.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Linda Snow Doxer, Precinct 1. I have a question and a point. I'm going to say my point first. I could not appreciate Bob Lasher more. I think he was an amazing town manager. I think that all of what has been said tonight is true. We are in a good financial place because of the way he managed our money, the way he built relationships. He was great to work with, even when we had differences. I really appreciate Bob Lasher, and I hope you are watching. My question is, it's up to the select board to decide what to give as termination pay. Does town meeting have the right to change that? That's my question. And then my opinion is that there are so many ways to say thank you. I sent Bob a thank you note. I know other people did other things. There were signs around town. Bob was very appreciated. But as was said, we have a responsibility to the taxpayers, and what we spend is also coming out of other places. And as much as I think Bob deserves $1 million, I couldn't vote to spend that. He got his pay. Mr. Berman just finished saying he wanted to be on the up and up, and I appreciate that. And that's who Bob was. He was an amazing role model as well. And the other side of that point is the precedent point. We have a lot of people that gave 1,000% to this town and who continue to do that. There are people who retired after 32 years, after 50 years. They don't get a termination bonus at all. They get a thank you, and it's heartfelt and it's meant. I think that what was decided upon was a gift and reasonable, and I do not support this amendment. And I'd like to know whether it's even legal for us to change the amount that our 5 people of the select board voted to give him. Thank you.
Ms. Freed?
Thank you. Ivrea Freed, Town Council. So the termination pay provision comes from Article 5.1 of the Charter. And as a town meeting member previously read, it says that the pay is determined by the Board of Selectmen. So what you are voting on tonight is to make the funds available. To the extent that the town meeting, in its wisdom, decides to increase this line item, Bob will only receive the additional pay if the Select Board subsequently votes to provide him with those funds.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, right here in the middle.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Vanessa Alvarado, Precinct 5. So one, I would like to take a moment to recognize Bob's hard work. He was tremendously hardworking, and he gave a great deal of his time and energy to this community. To Mr. Berman's comment earlier regarding the salaries, I was also on the Select Board when this was discussed. The salary amount that was settled upon included communities that are significantly wealthier than Reading, and so that did impact his final salary. There are 2 points that I really want to make. One is that bonuses are a uniquely corporate concept. When a business does well, they reward their employees from the profits that were created by their hard work. We're a town. We don't have profits. We have residential tax dollars. The other item I wanted to raise is that this is a bit of an equity issue for me because there is, as other members have stated, there is not a single other employee on town staff that has received a bonus with the exception of the former town manager. We have a principal that is departing. The notice just went out today. I'm wondering if that employee is going to be eligible for this bonus. It's concerning to me in what it will say to our staff that the highest paid employee in town staff with a salary of over $200,000 a year when he resigned is the only one whose bonus is under discussion and who is even eligible for a bonus. So I would urge you to think about all of our wonderful staff who have gotten us through the pandemic and who work so hard and give so much to our community every day, and them watching this discussion and wondering, what about them? Thank you.
Further discussion? Ms. O'Neill?
Mary Ellen O'Neill, Precinct 6. I've thought about this for a while, and when the Select Board was having its discussion, I generally am not in favor of setting this or doing a termination pay for generally in town employees. The reason I did support the vote that the Select Board did take on the $17,000 was I did think the COVID pandemic created an extra strain and stress, and that as the leader of the community, Bob set the tone, and did a great job. And so for that reason, I appreciate it, and appreciate him, and I'll miss his sense of humor, which is what I most appreciated about him. But I don't support this increase, and I think $17,000 is a fair amount. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes.
Todd Merkel, Precinct 8. I guess this question would be best answered by either or both of Ms. Alvarado and Mr. Berman. But my question is, given the language that I think it was Ms. Williams read from the contract itself, which I have not read, so I'm just referencing that statement by her. Did I have that right? Was it Ms. Williams?
Not in the contract.
Oh, in the charter. Okay, so if there's language in the charter that calls for I think it was not to exceed 12 months salary as the termination pay, if we're not to consider termination pay for exemplary performance for our employees, what's the purpose of that language in the first place? It seems to me that that language, when it was put there in the charter, was put there for a reason, presumably. And it seems to me that this discussion is focused on an employee who has performed, and it seems to me that that's why the language was put there in the first place. So I support this amendment.
Further discussion? Yes, over here.
Jason Clark, Precinct 3. My father's was a selectman for about 30 years. Dealt with more town managers than he'd probably care to think about. I asked him about this, and he says this almost always was something in the contract. My hunch about, I don't know for sure, I'm going to make a guess about the language about the 12 months is probably to set a limit, if I had to guess, just in case there might be something that might go higher than that. And so that's just what my little 2 cents I wanted to add here was that based on what I understand, this is something that's usually in the contract. Thanks.
Ms. Binder?
Thank you, Angela Bender, Precinct 5. I did a little research into that clause, and the clause was changed in the last charter change. And the reason sometimes why there's a clause for termination pay is for in the case that a town is trying to buy out a contract of a town manager that they want to be rid of, which happened in Stoneham where I work, last town manager, not the one we have now, he's great. But he was bought out of his contract, and so he was awarded termination pay to have him leave. The clause was, it is called termination pay, and it was in the final section of that part of the charter, and then it was only recently, last charter change, that it got moved up, and it made it much more ambiguous. And I have spoken to somebody who was on the charter committee and said, yeah, I don't really remember why this happened, but it is more ambiguous. So that is one thing. I also have a question for the town manager. Mr. Lillisher, Bob received $39,000 in vacation pay. Is that correct? I think that's correct. And then my final question is, during the select board discussion, and right now previous speaker, previous selectman, and a current select board member just said the town manager had enough sick time to not come into work for the 6 months. I'm a town employee. I have hundreds of hours of sick time. I don't use it. When I retire, I can't just take off sick. Is that the purpose of sick time? Would any employee be allowed to just call in sick for 6 months before they retire? Is that the proper use of sick time?
Please let her in talk. She has the floor.
So is that the proper use? Because it has been mentioned twice that he did the right thing and didn't just use sick time for the next 6 months. Is that something that an employee would be allowed to do, to put in the retirement notice and then just take 6 months or however much sick time they have?
I think it would be. I couldn't answer that question without really specifically looking at the individual, right? So these are HR matters.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it really depends on the history of the individual. Why is that person out of work? So I couldn't say yes or no.
I imagine somebody would need a medical reason to just use 6 months of sick time. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lestrade, is it? You don't need, okay. Person up on the, you had just put your hand down. Yes, that's you. Yes. The woman and then the left. Yes.
Hi, I'm Arison Engel, and this is my first time coming to town meeting. I'm taking deep breaths. I am so sorry to not know Bob. I don't know Bob at all. He sounds like a great person. I don't think that has anything to do with it, though. You don't want me not being in favor of, right? You don't want me not being in favor of this amendment since I don't know Bob. Just like I wouldn't want you to be in favor of something because you do know Bob. I know lots of people. I know a teacher who I replaced. She worked in Chelsea for 30 years as a middle school art teacher. And good golly, she was there till her last day. She took her 85% severance deal. She had to work until that birthday, and she did. And when you work in public service, that's what you do. And she pointed out that while my husband is so lucky he works in corporate land, and you do get a bonus because you sold 8 billion robots or whatever. Well, we didn't do that. And I'm sure Bob is a wonderful person, and I just don't think we should be thinking about, like, he's such a great guy, and Grace, I'm all about it. It just seems like now we're talking about Bob, right? And not a contract job, right? The whole point of a contract is it's not about the person, right? And I don't know, those are my 2 cents. As somebody who's just walked in on this that you guys all seem very familiar with, and I'm sorry, so that's all I have to say. Oh, and I'm from Precinct 7.
Sir, did you have a comment?
Phil Dardino, Precinct 3. Move the question on the amendment.
Okay. We have a motion to end debate on the proposed amendment. This requires a 2/3 vote. I would ask if my counters are all still here. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, which would raise the amount on line G91?
No.
What's going on?
Close debate. Right.
Moving the question.
Let me start over. We are ending, I think I may have said the wrong thing. We have a motion to end debate on the proposed amendment, G91, which raises the amount on that. What I'm asking you to do now is to vote yes or no on voting to end debate. All those in favor, please rise. Forty-two.
25.
25. 45. 41. 41. All those opposed to ending debate on the proposed amendment? 2. 0.
Oh, I'm sorry. 7.
7. And are we missing one? Who was the other? We only have 3 numbers, 2, 0, and 7. Oh, two zeros? Okay. Vote being 153 in the affirmative and 9 in the negative, the motion carries and the question has been moved. We will now go straight to a vote on the proposed amendment. This only requires a majority vote, so all those in favor of the proposed amendment to raise the amount in line G91, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the chair is in doubt. I am going to ask the same counters. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please rise.
What? Yeah, I'm counting myself.
Five, excuse me. 12?
20.
20? You need to be, I will repeat, you need to be, excuse me, you need to be up front. You need to be out of the, if you want to be counted, you cannot sit back there. So, you did count them. Okay, you did count them. Okay.
20.
29.
29. Okay, and those opposed to the amendment?
Bill, 12.
12. 36. 33.
16.
16. The vote being 66 in the affirmative, 97 in the negative, the motion does not carry. We now return to the main motion under Article 5. Any discussion? Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I wonder if we could return the screen back to the top line, health insurance.
And we have the screen. Thank you.
You noted earlier that the health insurance savings were $650K, and that $250 of that was funding OPEB this year. For those that may not know or are new to town meeting, other post-employment benefits is essentially an unfunded liability that the town eventually will pay. Where by paying that $250K, we're making a down payment towards this liability to help reduce its future value, or its unfunded value, I should say. There's a time value of money problem here, which is the longer you fail to fund it, the more effectively time works against you. The value of that liability increases with time. We are in an enviable position with free cash. I'm usually a hawk when it comes to free cash spending, but this liability has already been incurred. We don't save anything by leaving it unfunded. We actually cost ourselves money by leaving it unfunded. So I'd like to make a motion to alter line B99 to increase the amount of the OPEB funding to the same $500K we would be paying next year to get a one-year head start on it. And again, we're going to pay it later, we're going to pay it now, and the advantage of paying it now is time value of money.
So if you don't mind, Mr. Moderator, OPEB is coming up on Article 7, right? And just to give a preview, in FY22, the OPEB line was funded at $100,000, right? So what this would result with the $250,000 in addition, plus the items that are funded in the enterprise, the total on Article 7 for FY22 would be $468,500.
So you're saying the total amount of OPEB payment this year is $468K?
$468,500 if Article 5 is funded in this way.
Okay. I guess then I would simply true it up to the $500K level just for the sake of...
You still want to make your motion? Is that what you're saying? Oh, well, Ms. Angstrom? Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify. It's usually $500,000 for the general fund only. We're going to be at $468,500 for the whole enterprise fund and the general fund.
What's the total then for this year with both funds?
What's
the total then with both fund sources?
So in a typical year, we do $500,000,
Right.
and then over the last 2 years, because of the pandemic in the general fund, we scaled back to $100,000, and we are almost always at $500,000 in the general fund. We're at $468,500 when you consider the water, sewer, and stormwater. So we're going to be doing $100,000 plus $250, so it's $350. So we're about $200,000 shy of what we're usually doing in the general fund. However, I should mention that even though we budgeted $100,000 last year, when we came to April town meeting, or when we had it on Zoom, we had savings in this line item, and we put in over $800,000 to OPEB. So we didn't leave it at the $100,000 that we originally budgeted. We actually funded at a level that's typical. We had some savings. I want to say we had savings related to some agreement with the PEC related to going for a high deductible plan that was not, we didn't end up going with that because of the pandemic. And the PEC asked us to put the funding that we had set aside for that agreement into OPEB, if
Okay.
you recall.
Under those circumstances, I remove the amendment.
Okay, I had not taken a second, so you can withdraw it. Thank you. Further discussion, Mr. Sasso?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Sasso, Precinct 2. So I actually want to go back to the COVID expenses, and I will admit I've been doing a little bit of research on this with some help from pulling out some minutes from the meetings, both the FinCom and the Select Board. So I guess I'm under the impression that this COVID expenses has been paid for twice. That you went back to FinCom initially for the 80K, and then a few weeks later, the Select Board allocated the $250K out of ARPA, 80K of which was intended to cover this. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure I understand that it looks like they got paid twice for it. So this actually should be 80K coming out of the Health Department back to free cash. So now maybe I've completely misunderstood this, and if I'm wrong, by all means, please correct me. But based on the documentation, that's how I read it.
Mr. Maltese?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So it was a timing issue. We've all discussed it with FinCom, our town accountant, and we are funding this line only once. So just a little background. FinCom approved the purchase through a vote before the Select Board did. Right, so it's more of a procedural matter. So because there was a vote, that has to be recorded in our books as a transfer from reserves, right, into the COVID line. Now that the Select Board has authorized $250,000 from ARPA, the actual expense was paid out of ARPA, right? But in order to true up our books, if you will, we're essentially putting the money back in the lines where it started. So we will only pay for this expense once. This is essentially just reimbursing FinCom for that vote.
So, but where is the money coming back into the budget from that? Because I don't see. So, from a budget perspective, it should be net zero, right? That if ARPA is actually paying for it, which I applaud the Select Board for recognizing that this actually was a true ARPA expense, and so they went ahead and they proactively did that, which again I think that was one of my original concerns. But having that been done, we're still taking money out of our free cash and putting it to bring this back. So in reality, where is the net zero for this? Because this is not. I don't see it here.
Ms. Angstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So what had happened was we were in a situation where we wanted to order the COVID rapid test around the holidays. They were hard to come by, and we had to buy a pallet. We didn't have the funding for it because the ARPA had not been allocated yet. So in order to get an order in, we went to FinCom and asked for an $80,000 transfer. Once they approved that, I had to record that transfer. So there's a line in the general fund for $80,000 for these tests. Within a couple weeks, I saw the Select Board, and they did approve $250,000 for such expenses, COVID expenses related to mitigation, so public health expenses, anything related to the testing, sanitation would fall under that mitigation area. So what happened when the bill came in, it went directly to ARPA because now ARPA had allocated funding for that. The line item that I created by the transfer is going to close to free cash. And as a general rule, when we use a FinCom transfer, we reimburse FinCom so that at the end of the year, if there's anything unexpected, they have funding to utilize. So what you're seeing here is us refunding the FinCom transfer to FinCom so they have their $200,000 at the end of the year in case anything comes up. But it's kind of a wash because $80,000 is going to close out from that line I funded, and then this 80,000 that you take, they net out to zero. Does that
So
make sense?
it's just not showing up on here yet, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, so there's a line item within our general fund budget that's got an $80,000 budget and no expense is going to hit there. So it will close to free cash. And then we're taking free cash to refund FinCom so they have a full $200,000 to work with and they net out to zero.
Okay. It would have, a note to that effect would have been, because then we're really allocating this just to bring it back in the end.
Yeah, it's usually a general practice for us to do that at April town meeting if we've used any transfers, but yeah, a note might have helped. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Okay. And then I did have one other quick question. I noticed that there are 2 line items under the water enterprise and the sewer enterprise for the sewer and water rate studies. I think if I understand those correctly, if I read somewhere that those are intended to support looking at tiered water rates, is that correct?
Yes. Wakefield completed a study, and it looked at a lot of things, like capital funding, the amount of reserves that are in place. But the one of those key recommendations in Wakefield was to implement a tiered water rate. That is correct.
So again, but for the purposes of this 13K under both of these, this is a larger study of kind of water or sewer in general, or is it just focused on the rates, or it's, I mean, because we've, again, we're looking at reserves that we've spent over the last few years, especially now. Is that the intention of this money, is to come up with a better plan for how we kind of mitigate through what are expected to be further expenses in this area?
That is correct. So it's a comprehensive study of our water and sewer enterprises. It is not just focused on implementing tier rates, although in Wakefield, it was one of the recommendations.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Bill Brown, Precinct 8. Can anybody explain what the 50,000 land community visioning process is? And I could be incorrect, I think there's only 2 large parcels of land that this town has that we could do anything with. That's not under anybody's jurisdiction. There's a land across the high school which is under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, and I believe the property down that we just purchased down off of across the thing. Other than that, I don't think there's any large amount of land that we should be looking at unless I need a new pair of glasses.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the in my short time here, those 2 parcels have come up several times, and the answer, or the question is, what do we do with those 2 parcels? So the town meeting in 2014 made a requirement that the select board essentially have a community envisioning process, right? That they engage the community and do some layouts, do some coordination with citizens in the area, right? And they do some layouts, of option A, option B, option C, and that is eventually the process that just takes a little bit of funds, and it's something that will involve an architect and those sorts of expenses.
Thank you. For those that may not know the history, the land on Oakland Road is tax titled property taken 1937, and I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that, and he probably would get fired, but the town treasurer has the authority to sell tax title property under state law. So he could sell it tomorrow despite the Board of Selectmen or anybody else. But he probably wouldn't be working the next day.
Yes.
Nancy Doctor, Precinct 1. Could you clarify, or maybe the health director could clarify a little bit more about the outsourcing of the public records? You had mentioned that this is going to be finally changing our paper inspection to electronic. is that all it's going to cost to change that in terms of handheld devices? Is that it? Only 25,000?
So the answer to it is yes, but this will also go into scanning some previous records that are in paper and are physically stored in our office. So one is actual scanning of documents into electronic format, and also funding a software that is going to be given to our inspectors, and essentially will come in a tablet and will allow them to do electronic health inspections.
So you're going to be scanning the old paper inspections, and they'll be available electronically?
It is for both, yes.
Okay, so then the question is that something that we'll have to go through the same request, public record request? Is that going to be something we can access online as a community for those health records? The inspection records. Will that be something that's something we could see down the road?
Yeah, we can look at it. I mean, I'm not sure what's in those reports, like what can be available, what cannot. I mean, we can certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further discussion? None appearing? Oh, we're in the back. Okay, you need to come up front if you want to get recognized. I've said that a few times.
Shirley Jia from Precinct 6. So on page 7, I'm talking about B99, the benefits about health insurance. I spent tremendous time on this, so I want everyone look at page 70. I calculated 5 times because I was shocked to make sure I was right. So for the health insurance, the third column, the second line, health insurance, you see the numbers. The actual spending on financial year 21 and the town meeting budget in financial year 22, the difference is 1.5 million. I was shocked, so I did calculate 5 times why we keep over budgeting health insurance. On page 69, the second paragraph, the very last sentence said, the OPEB portion of this expense is optional today. But why we keep over budgeting? And I did also did the calculation. So in financial year 21 to 22, we over budget 691K. And financial year 22 to 23, we over budget $973,000. And this year, we budget 1.5 million more than actual cost.
Ms. Angstrom?
Yeah, I just don't understand. Can you explain to me? Sorry, first year.
So during the pandemic, we had seen less people going to the doctors, and we actually got dividends back from, we actually got a premium holiday in both 20 and 21 for that lack of usage of the health insurance plan. But in addition, a few years back, we had done some changes that actually gave us a negative number for health insurance. So when we're budgeting health insurance, we give it like a 6 or 7% increase. And a couple years ago, they made the decision, the PEC and the town manager, to try and get people who are over 65 on Medicare who weren't already on Medicare. And there's fines involved if you don't do it by the time you're supposed to. So they went through this long process, and they got all of these people that are on our regular Blue Cross Blue Shield plan into Medicare in our supplemental MedX plan, which was much more cost efficient. It saved us $10 million on our OPEB liability to do that. And it also made our health insurance rates go down because the people that were left in our Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, which is much more expensive, were people that were younger. They were younger than 65. So our demographic information was better, and we got better rates as a result. So in the last few years, there's a couple different things there that are causing that to look strange, because when we're budgeting the year, we don't know we're going to get that kind of savings. You don't ever get a negative number on health insurance, but because of the changes we made, I think it was fiscal 19, we got a negative, I think it was a negative 1%. And then during the pandemic, we got a lot of premium holidays because people were not using their health insurance. And that could not have been anticipated when we were building the budget. And I want to say it was like $1.5 million. It was over $1 million.
I'm not sure I understand, but thank you for explanation.
Okay, a premium holiday is when they give us money back from what we were paying. So this past year, we had 1 month where every person who was on our health insurance plan didn't have to pay their premium, and we pay 71% of the premium. So the town benefited 71% of that 1 month premium holiday. So they didn't charge us our premiums for 1 month.
Okay, how much is it?
It was over $1 million. I want to say it was 1.5 this past year. And then the prior year, we got that same, I think it was a half of a premium holiday. So in the last 2 years, you're seeing things that are not typical happening within our health insurance budget.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Did I hear your hand? Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Further discussion? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? This requires a majority vote, so I will take a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion under Article 5, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the motion carries. Do we have a motion to adjourn until Thursday evening? Okay, this is a non-debatable. Do we have a second, by the way? Second. All right. This will end the discussion for tonight. If it passes, it requires a majority vote, and it's non-debatable. All those in favor of adjournment till Thursday evening, please raise your hand. And those opposed? The motion carries, and this town meeting stands adjourned till Thursday evening.